Please stand for the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For a moment of silence. A lot of times we don't recognize people who have been a part of this district and have passed on. We had a family in the Freehold Borough, the Ring family. I have both twins in my class, Patrick and Chris Ring, and Patrick passed away, so I would like to ask for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Okay. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this meeting has been duly advertised in the Spark Press, issue of January 21st, 2014. All municipal clerks of townships and boroughs within the Regional High School District have been duly notified, and the requirements of posting the notices have been met. Minutes approved. We have a motion for the minutes. We have a second.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Stankheller?
Yes to the January 6th minutes and I abstain on December 16th.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sotero?
Yes.
Mr. Mazick?
Yes, except that I abstain on December 16th.
Mr. Moses?
Yes. Communications are on file. Superintendent's report.
So I'm going to open up this evening. We have a student cabinet that we formed this past year. I have 6 wonderful seniors sitting in the front row tonight. And the purpose of the student cabinet was really to form a liaison between the central administration, the students in the building, and sort of hear from them thoughts around initiatives that are rolling out in the schools, how students are involved. They're helping us draft the sort of chart the progress for subsequent groups to come in terms of how we'll select those students. And early on, one of the things that we asked of these 6 young folks was to come out to a board meeting and to just share a little bit about who they are and what school they're representing and some of the things about the school from which they're from. So I'm going to go just introduce these folks very quickly. So from Freehold High School, I have Kevin Gilboy, who's on the end there. From Cold Snake High School, I have Chris Durso. From Nowton, I have Hallie Proper. From Howell, I have Michelle Galino. Kara O'Brien is from Freehold Township. And Marshall Kramsky drew the short straw to go first. But if you know Marshall, he didn't really draw the short straw, he volunteered. So we thought it would be wonderful to let these students introduce themselves to you and share a little bit of the insights that they might have about their school community. But more importantly, it's been a wonderful bridge for Dr. Hazel and myself to really solicit some honest feedback about what's happening in schools and perceptions, and to see it from the perceptions of seniors. And these 6 folks, you know, if any of us doubt that you know the future is in poor hands, I would challenge you to spend a few minutes with this group, because you'd rest assured that the world's in terrific hands, actually. So, Marshall, I'm going to call you up. You're on the spot, and allow you to take the podium.
Good evening. I would like to thank Mr. Sampson, Dr. Hazel, and the Board of Education for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight representing Marlborough High School. My name is Marshall Grafsky, and I am a member of the Student Executive Cabinet as Superintendent. Being a member of Mr. Sampson's cabinet is a tremendous honor. So far, I have already learned about all aspects of leadership, the great things happening throughout the district, and pressing issues that are impacting my peers in other schools. It is an honor to represent Marlborough High School because the person I am today is heavily attributed to all I have learned at MHS, inside and outside of the classroom. I am proud to call myself a Marlborough Mustang. Being a Mustang is a unique experience. Marlborough Mustangs are not simply people who represent Marlborough High School in athletic or academic competitions. Every teacher, administrator, faculty member, alumni, and every student is a Mustang. There are many characteristics that come along with being a Marlborough Mustang. Let me share a few with you. A Mustang is warm and welcoming. The first day any student walks into Marlborough High School, they automatically enter a community that welcomes them with open arms. At MHS, the upperclassmen serve as a support system for the underclassmen, to answer any questions they may have or help them in any way. In the month of September, it is not uncommon to see a senior power walking through the hallways with a freshman by their side to show them where their class is, while still trying to get to their own class on time. I will never forget my second day of freshman year. I was lost on my way to English class. I made a wrong turn and had no idea where I was. After a few minutes of examining every room number in search of E119, the late bell rang. Picture this, I'm sprinting frantically to get to my class until a senior wearing a blue and gold Mustangs t-shirt stops me and walks me to my class. He even calmed me down by talking to me about the amazing opportunities at Marlborough. And when I arrived at class, he even explained to my teacher why I was late. A Mustang is motivated. Marlborough High School is one of the best schools in the state. This is attributed to our talented and motivated students and dedicated and enthusiastic teachers who love what they do. Our teachers learn just as much from their students as the students learn from them. Marlborough's challenging environment inspires students to reach their full potential. You should know that learning at Marlborough High School does not end with the curriculum. Whether it's from teachers, coaches, or even peers, I've learned numerous life lessons on hard work, perseverance, and the real world while at Marlborough. A Mustang is supportive. At Marlborough, people are there for you. Even tonight, I would like to thank the Marlborough High School administration for coming out to support me. The most common example of support that happens on a daily basis would be a teacher expressing how proud they are of a student for their efforts in the classroom. Also, community service is a huge part of MHS. Students and teachers work side by side, giving back through different clubs and activities, including raising money for various causes such as Hurricane Sandy relief, cancer research, and many other causes near and dear to our students and staff. Mustangs support their athletic teams by being active members of the Stang Gang and cheering on our peers at every game. Mustangs support each other at extracurricular events, including Battle of the Classes, our school dramas and musicals, Mr. MHS, and International Day. In any capacity, Mustangs support each other to achieve success and give back. A Mustang is extraordinary. At some high schools across the country, it is easy to get lost in the crowd. This could not be further from reality at Marlborough High School. At Marlborough, every student is important. Every student has the opportunity to do something special from the first day that they walk into MHS. Marlborough students are not only prepared for the real world and college by the time they graduate, they're ready to succeed. Mustangs do not forget their roots either. At countless athletic events or extracurricular activities, alumni, both young and old, come to visit and support their alma mater. When a student graduates Marlborough High School, they do not leave an average person. They leave an extraordinary adult. I believe that the Mustang is a perfect fit as the mascot of Marlborough. A Mustang is defined as an American wild horse. Although Marlborough students are not wild, they have the freedom along with the support system to explore opportunities during high school and ultimately their life. I know a Mustang that made a name for himself after moving here from Malaysia. A Mustang that had his original musical pieces played at Carnegie Hall. A Mustang that was in a Broadway musical. And a Mustang that won statewide debate competitions. Those are just a few of the remarkable accomplishments my fellow Mustangs have achieved. In my graduating class, class 2014, there are Mustangs that will be attending Ivy League schools, competing in collegiate athletics, joining the military, and ultimately following their dreams. At Marlboro High School, everyone is a Mustang for life. Thank you.
Now, to be fair to the group, so that was terrific, Marshall. That was terrific. You set the bar. But to be fair to the group as well, Marshall was incredibly positive, but we have also had some real honest discussions about some of the programs and things that we need to improve, and how we can go about doing that. And so the group, while celebrating our success as a school district, also takes a critical eye to some of the things that we're doing that we believe we can do better. And there's no better voice than the students. They will tell you like it is in 5 minutes. I learn more from this group in 10 minutes of conversation than I do in a half an hour of walking around the building. And that's the truth. So, thank you.
Marshall, really well done. What are you going to major in?
Media, culture, communication, that would be broadcasting.
Might also want to think about political science.
He knows you in 5 minutes now.
All right, I'm going to move on with a bunch of other items. So a few, as Mr. Moses noted at the start of the meeting, we've moved to board docs as a system for our agenda management. So if you're looking online, our system has changed from what it had been traditionally, and the intent is to be able to manage that by department more specifically, so that you can go in and click, and it's one-stop shopping. All the attachments are embedded into the agenda document and as such. We just migrated to that system within the past month or so, so obviously we're still working out some of the specifics around it, and we did go a big cold turkey with the hard copies, so you put your feet to the fire. The weather issues over the past couple of weeks. It's been a joy for everyone. We've had the never-ending midterms in the district. I've received 10,000 tweets about that. I do read them. But a few items. So we have school in session, and the calendar is being amended tonight. We had school in session on February 14th. That was originally a day. That was scheduled as part of President's Day weekend. That will be a full day. Our next day in the order of progression from which we take from the calendar is Monday, February 17th. Given this week's forecast, I just want to be clear to folks that if there's a school closure this week, the next full day that comes back on the school calendar is Monday, February 17th. So obviously, we'll monitor the situation closely over the next couple of days. But it's just been one of those. It's been one of those years, and both schools and municipalities are stretched with the rock salt and the sand. But I want to go through the public. The decision-making process to delay school or to close school is not as simple as waking up and simply saying, yes or no. So I've gotten a lot of questions over the past couple of weeks about, well, what's the process and who's involved? The process really begins around 3:30 a.m. That's usually the first phone call to the Director of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Boyce, Dr. Hazel, so that we're looking at, that we're watching the weather closely. And then we have a number of maintenance individuals throughout the district who literally drive the district. So they go out, starting at about 4 a.m. and give me reports from all of our different municipalities and talk to the contractors who are plowing in the different municipalities to really get a bead on what the roads are like and what that looks like. We also have a network of superintendents across the county who are all talking to their municipal DPW folks, and we have up-to-date weather forecasts that we subscribe to that are specific to our area. So all of this goes into the decision-making process of whether or not to move forward with the day, call a delay, or what have you. And usually for us as a school district, the deadline, the last moment that we could really make a call in which our buses aren't already on the go is about 5:15 a.m. So we make the call by about 5:15 at the latest. We try to do it earlier if it's clear. This year has been a little bit complicated because the storms have come in the morning. You know, they've come and coincided with either the start of school or they've just wrapped up as you're trying to get to school. On the day of the early dismissal, I was not, I was certainly not happy with the snow fell much more rapidly than I think anybody anticipated. The entire state basically dismissed at 1 p.m., 12:30, 1 p.m., and that strained a lot of the bus services tremendously. And we ran into some delays, not from our own buses, but from a subcontractor that we had. I subsequently met with the vice president of that company and requested that they come up and demonstrate to us that they had a contingency plan in the event that an anomaly like that occurred again. That was probably the first time in 5 or 6 years that we did have to have an early dismissal in the manner that we did. They agreed to utilize buses from a closer yard. We agreed to change some pickup schedules to accommodate those folks so that there aren't any delays in the event of inclement weather. But on that given day, to get across, we have 212 square miles in this school district, and we run close to 800 bus runs. So we have more bus runs in this district than most of the districts in the county have students. So it's a large process and endeavor, and some of those runs were delayed. And I'd like to thank our bus drivers, because what ended up happening at the building level in our 3 late schools is that a lot of our bus drivers made multiple runs on their own when they didn't have to make sure that we were just getting kids out of the building as quickly as possible and home. So it's never an exact science. Anytime that someone compliments us and say, "Oh, great call," I say, hold your breath, because the next time you may disagree with the call. But we certainly err on the side of caution. There's a lot of process and thought that goes into making that decision. So we'll be monitoring the weather closely. Given the past couple of years, it's been a bumpy ride with the weather. We switched the day. We had a half-day early dismissal schedule for professional development. We canceled that and moved it to just a delayed opening rather than an early dismissal, because unless you have 4 hours, the state does not recognize it as a full school day. So it would have been akin to bringing students in for 2 hours and having it not count as a school day. So we made that switch. But 4 hours is the threshold.
Hypothetically, in an extreme situation, let's say there were 3 straight days of delayed openings, they all count as the full day.
Correct. Hypothetically, if we had a week of, you could petition at the end of the year that it was, I'll give you the perfect example. Last year with Hurricane Sandy, a lot of folks in the state said, hey, we've been closed for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in some cases longer. Any thoughts to the state about extending the school year, making up that time, and the state didn't budge on that. So I think it's probably you're swimming uphill to have any additional days if you lose that much time. But hypothetically, you could have a week's worth of delayed openings.
Excuse me, Mr. Sampson. I know our very busy Marshall has a commitment. He's wanted on the basketball court. And I want to thank the executive cabinet for being here. I don't know if any of you have any commitments, but I know Marshall does need and has a pressing commitment that he needs to get to. And I want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Kramsky for being here this evening in supporting your son in this very important role in our school district. We are so extremely proud of him. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
We thank you.
So that's your get out of jail free card. A couple other items. The school performance reports came out, were issued a couple weeks back, and just some some information around those performance reports. So if you remember, prior to the school performance reports, this is the second year that is how schools have been sort of assessed across the state of New Jersey. Prior to that, there was the school report card, and schools were broken into district factor groups that were based on the socioeconomic status of the town. So they were grouped A through J, A being the poorest districts, J being the wealthiest districts, to give you perspective. What the state then decided to try to do was to create a report that would give you a snapshot of the performance of the demographics of students within a particular building in a district. So not based on the town's wealth necessarily, but the specific demographics of the student within that building. And it's based on the percentage of ELL students, the percentage of special education students, the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. How those numbers are determined are not released to us, so we don't know how those percentages shake out into the formula. And what each school in the state has is a peer group of 30 other school districts, or approximately 30 total school districts. And there's some fluctuation from year to year. The first year that the school performance reports were published, we had a number of questions and concerns about what they did or did not contain. I'll give the state credit, they've made some adjustments this year. But it is and the state is clear that they've done it in a way intentionally to sort of make it difficult to compare one school to another, because they put them in bands of these 30 districts, and they're very tightly grouped. So for instance, the average, a HESPA passing rate of 94.9 across the state in language arts puts you at the 49th percentile in academic achievement. Now, that's important to note because the cut scores and the range of the HESPA, if you're talking high school, is fairly wide. And when you get into the 95% range and up, it becomes very difficult to distinguish between 95 and 97 and such, because there's a range of scores in those HESPA that are somewhere around 7 or 8 points in a range. The state doesn't release that, so we don't know. It would be nice to know. However, the first year out the school, and they grade you along, they assess you along academic achievement, college and career readiness, and a number of other categories. And they factor in a number of AP courses, but it's based on 10 specific core courses, so it doesn't capture and they do that intentionally to not have smaller schools at a disadvantage to larger schools. High schools, so we have 20 some odd AP offerings, but they'll only count the 10. This year they did not count dual enrollment for the second year in a row. We've for lack of a better term, lobbied to have that included, because we have a few hundred students that are in dual enrollment courses, taking courses, college level courses. They did include the ACT this year, which we were happy about. Last year, the ACT was not included as a measurement. We're a district that utilizes the ACT as a diagnostic for our 9th and 10th graders. We think it's a better diagnostic it's more aligned to the Common Core standards. So that was included. The schools that pay for the PSAT and issue the PSAT in their districts still do very well in that continuum. We do not do that. Like I said, we utilize the ACT. And we're still trying to make some sense of the overall composite in the district. Some of our schools went up and some of our schools went down, and we attribute that more to the groupings for which they were placed. But I'll give you the example. Freehold Township, their achievement was relatively flat, somewhere around 97% proficient. But they went from somewhere around the 50th percentile to the 90th percentile in terms of academic achievement. So that has more to do with the groups that they were placed with, the schools that they were placed with, than the achievement in Freehold Township, which was flat. So I would encourage any parent to read through the school performance report, to call your building principal with any specific questions. It's a lot to take in. I don't think it measures some other avenues of success, and it's limited in scope in some ways as well, based on what it counts and what we don't know in terms of the formula, the magic formula. However, the intent of the school performance reports are to give schools some sort of information around student achievement in a number of manners, in a number of avenues from which we can sort of take stock. It'll be interesting as we move to Park, and all you students out there that are going to move to an online testing platform and end-of-course assessments. Park is supposedly on time to roll out next year officially with 3 end-of-year assessments. I believe there's 3. We're piloting it this year. We're one of, there's about 70% of the school districts in the state that are piloting the Park assessment. And that's going to be an interesting endeavor. The students are completely randomly selected. Somewhere around about 800 of our students have been selected to pilot that test. Those results will not be made available to students or parents or the district. However, the argument is that the students getting the experience of taking an online assessment, taking one of the newer assessments that have been developed to get a gauge of what that process looks like. From the school district perspective, obviously we get an overview of the infrastructure needs, the organizational process to administer the test. It's a huge endeavor, and it's fundamentally different than what our students have been used to or accustomed to in terms of taking an assessment. So we are, we're anxious to see what those wrinkles are when we go through that piloting. We have our job fair scheduled as a school district for Saturday, March 1st. One of the things that we believe sets Freehold Regional High School District apart is our ability to attract and retain exceptional folks, and that starts with the job fair. Each year we hold an invite-only job fair. We sort through hundreds of resumes. We pick the folks that, on paper screen the very best. Paper is paper, we all know that. And we spend a Saturday afternoon interviewing several hundred potential candidates for open positions as we go through our scheduling process for the next school year. So we sort of create a cadre of folks that are potential candidates as openings come up as we move to the next school year. And it's, I think the job fair itself and the way in which we conduct it shines a very positive light on our school district as a whole. We usually have about 40 administrators there on Saturday, divvied up into teams interviewing potential candidates. It's actually one of my favorite days of the year because I get to kind of talk to everybody, talk to candidates, drink a lot of coffee, and walk the halls. Last Saturday we had a few Chinese New Year celebrations I was able to attend at Fidelity and Huaxia School in Marlborough. Terrific celebration. That we have at Marlborough High School. We do have a Chinese school that uses our school on Saturdays. A very important, vibrant part of our community, and always incredibly welcoming. So it was a terrific event. Bless you. We also on January 24th, the school district hosted a site visit from the Panasonic Foundation, the New Jersey Network of Superintendents. That is a grant-funded program, network of superintendents, 12 across the state of New Jersey, dedicated to excellence and equity. And as being a member of that group, one of your commitments is to host site visits where that team comes out and spends a day in your school district looking at a particular issue or problem of practice within your district, or giving you feedback on how you're addressing it. They visited Freehold High School and Marlborough High School, and looked at our in-class resource classes across the district and our theory of action, which is basically our way of doing things around ICR. I thought it was a terrific day. We received some excellent feedback from that group. They spent a whole day in and out of our classrooms, talking to our students, talking to our staff, interviewing our faculty and staff across the board, and helping us really align our perceptions of what we think is occurring versus what folks are saying is occurring. So plugging away at those gaps as well. And finally, had the good fortune, we run a program. It doesn't run in every building, but we still have it in Marlboro, We the People competition, which is a terrific competition every year where students pose arguments around historical concepts and tie those to modern day issues. And every year I sit on a panel and get to put the social studies hat back on and judge and ask questions of students. So we had that on January 17th as one of the introductory rounds where the students progress through and then ultimately compete based on how they perform. So a terrific opportunity, and again, just another way that I think our students really shine.
Thank you. Next we have board reports, curriculum and instruction.
Sure. I'll start off with the first part, and then I'm going to shoot it over to Mr. Messengers to talk about the second part of the meeting. So just to give an update on the progress of becoming an IB school, we were visited back in October by our IB consultant who worked with some of the staff that we identified to lead the procedure of applying to become an IB program. They reviewed the application, and we need to submit the application for authorization in this April. While the IB consultant was here, they talked about some of the different curriculums that we want to offer through this IB program. And as you can see on tonight's agenda, we have asked certain staff members to write the curriculum for these IB programs. They fall into six different categories: a language, a second language, individuals in society, and experimental science, mathematics, and arts. And in addition to taking courses in those 6 areas, students will need to take theory of knowledge, do a volunteer service project, and then do an extended essay, which is equivalent to like a mini thesis. We've had teachers go out for trainings for their specific IB fields. The trainings have been happening since December. And then looking forward, the staff is beginning to look at our 9th grade class to identify people that may be potential IB students in 2 years, because the program begins in 11th grade. And they are looking to set up a parent meeting in February and have an introductory workshop for the township community.
Mary, before we switch it over, Michael, in case there's someone in the audience who doesn't understand, what is an IB?
Sure. IB stands for International Baccalaureate Program. Right now, we currently have an advanced placement. There's a trend coming in various high schools in America and also globally for the implementation of the International Baccalaureate Program. It's a rigorous academic program that requires students to be advanced in all different areas, not just one specific course of study like the AP does. It's recognized on a college and university level, and it's something that's standard across different countries. So if you end up going to university and meeting an IB student who went to school in China or went to school in England and they took an IB course, you guys will have had the same standard and reached the same level.
Was there any college credit for it?
There can be college credit for it as well, similar to the AP.
Tashi, can I add to that? I was pretty instrumental, I think, in bringing the IB program, or at least initiating the action taken to get it to our district. And the reason I first learned about it was Biotechnology High School has it. Biotechnology High School right now was rated by U.S. News and World Report as the #1 high school in New Jersey. We shouldn't take a second seat to anybody, and I don't think we do. I think we need the recognition, and it leads into something I was going to say in the back there, and I don't want you to turn red or anything, Christopher, but here's a kid who got 2,400 on the SAT. That's the best that you can do in this country. We don't take a back seat to anybody, and it was a strong initiative on the part of Mr. Sampson. A lot of work from Mr. Moore to put this thing together. The IB courses don't work on the same time schedule. In other words, the class periods are different. So in order to implement this, I would go in and stamp my feet and say what a great program it was, and Mr. Sampson made it happen. And the easy answer would be, oh, we just can't do it. But not this district. They took the bull by the horns, and they brought it to us. So I so much appreciate the work that this district did in implementing that, especially Mr. Moore. Thank you.
Okay. Well, back on January 27th, we talked about the Common Core in the other half of the meeting. And the interesting thing was, coincidentally, about 5 days before this meeting, I was at a soccer game, indoor soccer. And there was a bunch of parents sitting in the stands. They were talking about the Common Core, and they were not very happy campers. And I asked them what was the issue, because I had said from the high school I hadn't heard any issues. So they sent me to their leader, and I talked to the woman, and basically she really went in and talked all about testing. Okay? So I'm really going to regurgitate a lot of what Jeff Moore said, because it was very, very timely. And what he said was that there's like a knee-jerk reaction to testing and teacher evaluation, and somehow relaying that to the Common Core. So he really educated us with respect to testing is different than Common Core. And I had asked him about the feedback he was getting from parents about Common Core. And it actually is the same exact feedback Marlboro K-8 is getting, and it's really about the rigor of the classes and the subject matter and the Common Core. And one of the things that we talked about were that the district really has to digest the standards and create curriculum around it. It's not the government just giving us a curriculum that we then implement. And basically, the whole testing is more tied into No Child Left Behind. So when someone talks about testing, it's not really having anything to do with Common Core. It's more tied into No Child Left Behind. And then we talked about all the tests that measure college readiness, like SAT and ACT, are becoming more aligned with the Common Core. And that, so college entrance tests are really changing. And then what we did was, there were supervisors there, and we really went over real-life examples, whether it was respect to math, language arts, and history, and the changes that are being implemented in these subject areas surrounding Common Core. So, for instance, in math, in the old days, the math teacher would give you a formula and show you how to do it, and then you'd go home with 50 different problems to solve. Whereas nowadays, there's going to be less focus on that, and more, you're going to have to go home and figure out a way to solve a problem, and come back the next day and really defend how you came about the answer. So, and they showed us a real-life example that Carl was able to get in his head. I had to sit there on scrap paper and figure it out about the pool and the water, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Carl got it. Okay. And then, you know what, the other
How about
thing...
that, Chuck? Isn't that something?
I don't want to be in your head.
Okay, good. But you are.
And the other thing, when we moved on to language arts, we really found out that people aren't reading as much nonfiction these days as they used to. And that's something that has to change. And these types of things are going to be implemented even in math. I think they also said phys ed, there's going to be more reading in all classes. So even math teachers are engaging kids in literacy. So the struggle is part of the homework, is really another bottom line with respect to the Common Core, and that was basically what we talked about with respect to the Common Core.
Yeah, just a couple of follow-ups on that. So a lot of the work around non-fictional text comes out of Doug Reeves and folks like that spent a lot of time in classrooms and observing what impacted student achievement overall, and saw direct correlations between the utilization of engaging in the analysis of nonfiction text and student achievement. The issue with the Common Core is to be careful not to, and I've said this before, not to confuse the standards with standardized testing. Two very different arms to the Common Core. Something very interesting in New York happened today. They delayed a component of the assessment component of the Common Core. One of the things that we've said, sort of from the start, is that, and this is believing in the Common Core standards, but the assessment piece of the standardized tests that go along with it, we've had a lot of discussions around. That would be terrific if you sort of started with students as they progress through the school system, instead of inserting that on students who are already, perhaps 9th, 10th grade. And New York State today made a move in that direction, which I think will have potential ripple implications for other state departments of education and how they address the Common Core. But I think that what we've maintained all along as a school district is that, within the local context, we have to own the standards. And if you don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to do that, the standards will own you. They'll drive everything you do as a school district. So we've tried to be, I think, very aggressive the past couple of years in really looking at our curriculum with that in mind. But the general backlash is really focused on the testing more so than the specific standards. So it's going to be very interesting how that all plays out.
Okay, next we have Policy Committee.
I'll take that. Mr. Bruno was detained this evening. Ms. Mankhauser, feel free to supplement anything that I missed. But Policy met on Monday evening, February 3rd. A few items in the immediacy. We have 3 policy adoptions that are up for a first read this evening. 2 of those are around media relations. Some specific boilerplate language. However, we changed some of the language to reflect changes in our district. So, for instance, in terms of the vehicles for communication, we inserted the word electronic throughout because that is the primary mode. We inserted the district app, the term social media, because we do use Twitter as well. So just some minor tweaks to that policy to update it with more contemporary language. There was also a line around, the committee went back and forth around a line around, I think it started as, in an effort to engage in positive media relations, we shall, and what we decided as a committee is that it felt the language could be misconstrued in terms of how that was interpreted. So we struck that entirely and simply said, the board strives to most appropriately communicate with media entities and yada, yada, yada. So that was a specific language change. We also, there was some language around interviews in the district and who is the spokesperson for the district, and either the superintendent or the board president or the folks that are authorized without prior board consent to speak for the school district. So there was some specific language that I believe said for faculty and staff members in the district that the superintendent should approve all interviews, and we struck that and said shall approve because we just wanted to be clear if you're being interviewed about a specific district item without infringing on any First Amendment rights, that it should be read that way. And then the policy committee began a very spirited discussion around some of the aspects of our substance abuse policy and our accompanying discipline code, and the agreement that the committee reached at the conclusion of the meeting was that we were going to go back and come to the next policy committee meeting, so this, I mean the administrative team, and present a thorough overview of our discipline code and why or how our discipline code has evolved in the way it has in accompanying statutes and regulations around substance abuse. And that came from looking at our interpretation of reasonable suspicion being under the influence across the district and how that is being implemented across the district. So we stand at the crossroads of a deeper dive on those matters.
All right, next we have public participation. Oh,
Yeah, I'm just going to give a brief one. There has not been a facility committee meeting since the last board meeting, and one of the reasons is that, we're still in the process of achieving state approval on our capital planning program. So a status report on that. That program, as you all know, is anchored by ESIP, which is an energy savings-based program that's supplemented by energy subsidies, state grants, and also some short-term financing, all of which will be cost neutral to the district. And we have completed our work, and it is now down at BPU. Where we've gone since we last spoke was there is a third-party independent verification of the calculations of savings and projected costs associated with the project. And the reason that the state has designed the legislation for this type of project to have those types of checkpoints is because it's very important that this is designed properly so that the savings do support the future debt service payments associated with the project. There's additional information online, and for those of you who have not had a chance to hear this discussion over the last year or so, please feel free to do that, or in alternate. We anticipate having the full board's team here, a professional team, to have a thorough conversation about that at the March meeting. We anticipate having BPU approval certainly well before then, and we'll be in a position to actually bring the program in its final form to the board at our March 10th meeting. And so we're considering that in conjunction with our budget development, so we'll see how that fits into that thinking as well. So I just wanted to provide the board with an update on that matter. Regarding the agenda, there is an addendum that's on the back table, and it supplements the existing items in the area of G, personnel negotiations, specifically in G1, G2, G3, and G4. So those are some amendments to the agenda as presented.
Mr. Boyce, there's one additional change I want to bring to the board's attention. We have the first read of the 2014-15 calendar tonight. The original document that was sent to the board on Thursday had school in session on Columbus Day. That has now been removed from the calendar. When we examined that closely, we were trying to build more snow days into the calendar. It's not possible without exceeding the 187 days that we're contractually obligated not to exceed. So we have to pull that day back. And we're going to take a look between now and the final read if there's another way to do that. But in the interest of not approving something that would violate the collective bargaining agreement, we've inserted that day presently. So that's the one change to the calendar that the board received.
So that item on the agenda, Mr. Sampson, will be as amended.
Correct.
And Mr. Sampson, this copy is here for the board.
Yeah, just before we do public comment, I just want to recognize Field Township High School because we're approving the project ignition grant this evening. which is their teen driver safety program. And they're one of 10 high schools in the state, in the country, that was recognized with that grant. So it's a huge and significant honor. Correct.
The proposed amendment is that we do this for, we do the whole school.
Okay, next we have public participation, and we have one name. And I can read Wendy. Is it Beam?
Correct. Good evening. This is my first time attending the meeting. I have a daughter who's a freshman at Marlborough High School. And I was here really just to get a sense of what happens at the board level. As a parent, if I have just a moment to share my experience for an incoming freshman, it's been overwhelming for my daughter and a lot of her friends as well. And I know there's been some talk about change in curriculum. And, you know, as a parent of a 14-year-old who's engaged in playing sports for the school, in addition to having extracurricular activities, and is also taking a challenging academic schedule with honor classes and competitive classes, it's a lot on a kid. As a professional, I'm a counselor, and to be quite honest, I never quite understood the pressures and anxieties and depressions that teens were facing until my daughter started high school. And the amount of homework that she receives, the amount of stress that's placed on the exams, it is quite overwhelming. And when I look at some of the homework that she receives, a lot of it tends to be what I would consider busy work. You know, for example, in math, she'll get 40 problems. And certainly I think, you know, 10 problems at most would prove somebody's competency. And, you know, it's just, it's over and it's over. And, you know, the valedictorian at Marlborough Middle School, where my daughter attended, had to pull herself out of honors classes and comes home from school crying and overwhelmed. And that's really what I'm seeing. And when I look at people like my daughter and like her friends, these are kids that really should be excelling. You know, it was quite inspirational to hear Marshall speak, and I can only hope that when my daughter's a senior, that's her experience as well. But, you know, as a parent, and from the other parents that I speak to, you know, we now struggle in terms of, you know, do we start pulling our kids out of these honor classes because it's just too much pressure on them. And so I just think it's important for the board to hear a parent's perspective, because truthfully, I expected to sail through high school without a problem. And unfortunately, my daughter now has to decide in terms of, you know, taking an academic or a competitive academic schedule versus playing sports for the school. And truth be told, she should be able to do both, in addition to be able to volunteer for clubs and to just be a regular 14-year-old. And the experience that we're finding is that that's pretty close to impossible. And, you know, I just hope that as you move forward and look towards curriculum and really what happens in the, you know, not only in the classroom, but also the homework end of it. You know, I just think that what we're seeing is a little bit excessive, and I don't know, you know, to what extent, you know, the board is aware of what individual teachers are assigning, but, you know, 40 math problems or 35 pages of a Spanish assignment the first week of school, where my 14-year-old in a Spanish 2 had to count how many flowers were in a picture, and there were 35 pages of that. You know, simply just overwhelming and unnecessary. And that's just continued. You know, the other issue is in terms of spreading out assignments. My daughter will come home in one subject and have 3 hours of homework, and the next night she'll have no homework in that subject. And when I questioned the teacher during teacher conference as to, you know, isn't there a way to sort of spread out some of what you're looking for, the answer is that she's never thought of it like that, and she'll consider it. And a week later, she went back to the same subject. You know, assigning homework, excessive one night, and then none the next night. And I
I just think that, our goal coming out of this district is to not only provide the academics for the children, but to also provide the social supports and be able to encourage them to participate and really have the full experience of what it's like to be a high school student. And like I said, if it was just my daughter, I'd sort of evaluate what's going on in my house, but it's not just my daughter. I'm just the one that's here speaking and sharing what it's like to have, an academically, gifted child in some sense, but somebody who also likes to do stuff other than just do schoolwork. And it's hard to do both. And I'm hoping that as things progress, we're able to keep in mind what's going on, certainly in light of some of the suicides that have just happened in colleges and what we see and what we know we're facing as an epidemic in terms of our students with, who are on large doses of medications and are seeking recreational drugs and are just psychologically not doing well. I just hope that we'll keep that in mind as we strive to achieve academic success in the district, keeping in mind that sometimes social success is just as important. So thank you for allowing me to share my feedback, and like I said, I hope to be involved because, I'm a person who feels that I can't necessarily forge a complaint unless I'm familiar with what's going on. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
So you raised a couple of excellent points. So my first piece of advice is don't move out of the classes that your daughter's in. And I only say that because ninth grade is far and away the most difficult transition for kids. Research backs that we know that to be true. So, there's a lot of struggles that happen early on in ninth grade that students do move on. The comments around homework bother me. They bother me as an educator. They bother me as a parent. If we can't explain how our homework is connected to the day's learning or extends it in some meaningful way without it being rote and or extensive, then we have a problem. So I would, if you've already addressed it with the teacher and have seen no movement in that way, then I would take it right to the administration. Homework for me in public education is the third rail. And I'm not just talking about Freehold Regional High School District, I'm talking in general. We don't do it well. We often equate lots of homework with good teaching. We grade effort over achievement. So those are things that need to be addressed. As a parent, I sit and I'm the first one to question the assignment that my own kids have and the validity of what it's related to, what they're learning. So I would encourage you to take that to the administration if it's still a concern. But I would also, it's not overly complicated to have perspective on assignments over the course of a week or two for kids, and to talk to other teachers that are trending to have the same student body that you do. I would encourage you to bring sort of the inconsistencies to bear and let the administration know when those are occurring. When I used to teach AP History, AP US, the same students all had AP Bio. It's a simple conversation with the AP Bio teacher weeks out. When are you going to assess? When am I going to assess? Let's divvy that up. Let's make sure that we don't unduly put stress on kids with this, but still both achieve our curricular objectives. So there's flexibility there. I think ninth grade, I think that you've hit on a number of issues that we see across the board where there's a wheel that's turning. It's turning very rapidly, and we try as much as we can to slow that wheel down for students. Because high school itself has become sort of incredibly more demanding than certainly anything that I remember as a high school student. And I think if we're not careful and if we continue to gauge success in very narrowly defined ways, that we run the risk of really pushing our kids in unhealthy ways. So I guess what I'm saying is your points are well taken, but every individual student is unique, and every situation is unique, and every course schedule is different. So I would just encourage you to bring those problems to bear to the administration to help problem solve and mitigate any issues to help your daughter be as successful as possible. The kids put in a lot of time these days.
Ms. Burke, if I could just back up what Mr. Sampson said. I know that one of the things that they have found in surveys that student athletes do their best work during the season that they're playing their respective sport, and it's all about structuring time. And I know when I taught and coached at the Borough, some of my best players were in Med-Sci, and there's a lot of pressure in Med-Sci. In fact, we have a member on the board here, Mary Ann, who was on a championship field team and was also in Med-Sci. So it can be done, and I'm not saying that your daughter's problems aren't, real or severe, but I'm just giving you a glimmer of hope that, these are things that can happen. So I would urge you also not to put your daughter out of those classes. Okay, there are no other names. Does anyone else? Okay. If not, may I have a motion to approve and move resolutions G1 through K2 as amended?
Motion.
Second.
I love harmony.
Good.
Discussion?
Mr. Asatola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Fankhauser?
Yes.
Mr. Messenger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sotero?
Yes.
Mr. Mazick?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes. Okay. Next we have old business, new business, no business. We have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So shall you say, so shall it be written. Thank you for coming.